Alright, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Testa here, Mr. T here as always, and we are here today with our 11th Amendment video. We just finished our 10th Amendment on states' rights. Now, this video, the 11th Amendment, it is on sovereign immunity. Now, we talked about sovereign in the last video. Sovereign basically means like your own government, your own laws, your own, you run yourself. That's kind of what sovereign means in a simplified term. Now, sovereign immunity, what we're talking about today is the immunity of states. Okay? Now, we talked about states' rights in the 10th Amendment, and we're going to talk a little bit more. Technically, this is kind of a state right. Not officially, but technically. Alright? And I'm going to get into what that means. So basically, sovereign immunity for states basically means that a state can't be sued. Okay? The 11th Amendment is, in a nutshell, saying that a state can't be sued by someone from another state or a foreign power. That's what the actual wording of the amendment says. Okay? Later on, we're going to have a court case. We'll talk about that here in a second, where it ultimately extends to people in that state. So basically, the 11th Amendment says a state cannot be sued. So I can't go to Arizona, or I can't go to the government of Arizona and sue the government of Arizona. I can't sue the government of California or Nevada or Texas or any of those states. That's what the 11th Amendment basically says. Now, there are certain stipulations and there are certain ways to get around that, and we're going to talk about it. But first, we're going to get into why we even have this amendment in the first place. So, in 1793, we have a court case called CHISHOLM v. Georgia, and I'm sure I messed up that name. I am sorry, CHISHOLM, for messing up your name. But Alexander CHISHOLM, okay, in 1793, he was the executor of Robert Farquhar's estate. Okay, no idea if I'm saying these names right. I'm sorry for butchering them. But Alexander, I'm just going to stick with Alexander. Alexander CHISHOLM was the executor of Robert Farquhar's estate. And basically means he basically ran the estate. And he sued the state of Georgia because during the Revolution, Robert Farquhar, he gave Georgia a whole bunch of resources and supplies and stuff like that, and they never paid him for all of them. So his executor CHISHOLM sued the state of Georgia and said, "Hey, you need to give us the money for these supplies we gave you during the Revolution." Now, Georgia said no, so they took it to the Supreme Court. Now, in 1793, that's very, very early on in our country's history. I mean, our Constitution wasn't even written until 1787. Okay, it wasn't ratified until 83, and then it wasn't even taken 88, and it didn't even take effect until 1789. So we've only been our Constitution that we know today has only been around for 4 years at the time of this court case. So there really wasn't any precedent to go off of. So the Supreme Court said they agreed with CHISHOLM, and they made Georgia start paying back this stuff. However, Congress stepped in and passed the 11th Amendment, and then the states ratified it. Okay. Then in the court case Hollingsworth v. Virginia. I'm getting my court cases mixed up. Hollingsworth v. Virginia in 1798. They basically said, the Supreme Court said, all that stuff that Georgia had to pay back got thrown out the window because of the 11th Amendment. Now, the 11th Amendment, like I said, it allows states to have sovereign immunity, which means they can't be sued unless they agree to it. And you're thinking, why would anyone agree to being sued? Well, there's certain stipulations. One is just to make yourself look good. I mean, if you sit back and like, nope, I'm not going to touch that, then it makes you look guilty as it is. So there have been some situations where states did waive their sovereign immunity, and they allowed themselves to be sued, and they paid the price for it. Actually, more than you would think. Now, getting into this, so we talked about what the amendment does and the fact that you can't be sued. In Hans v. Louisiana, okay, now I'm getting to that court case. Hans v. Louisiana in 1890, the Supreme Court said that the 11th Amendment had a broader or an extended reach of sovereign immunity for each state. What that means is that you can't be a citizen of that state and sue that state. The wording of the 11th Amendment left out citizens of that state. It just says if a citizen of Arizona tried suing the state of California, you couldn't do that. Or if a citizen of Mexico tried suing the state of Arizona, you can't do that under the 11th Amendment. They have protection. Never mentioned anything if a citizen of California sued California, or a citizen of Arizona sued Arizona. Didn't mention anything about that, so people tried getting away with it. Hans v. Louisiana in 1890 corrected that and said, no, the 11th Amendment, actually the Constitution as a whole, they cited that the Constitution, even before the 11th Amendment, gave states sovereign immunity. Now, kind of moving on. So, there are certain times where the 11th Amendment doesn't take effect and the state can be sued. The first one was Ex parte Young, okay? Not, when I looked it up, I'm guessing it's supposed to be Ex parte v Young, but I got mixed up when I was doing my research, and I literally found it Ex parte Young. That's literally how I found it, on more than one occasion. So Ex parte Young, 1908, was a court case, and it basically, in a nutshell, it allows, the Supreme Court said you as a citizen can sue state officials. Okay, the court case went where they tried suing this one, the people tried suing this one state official in the state of Minnesota, and he said, no, because I'm a state official, you can't sue me because I have immunity. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't sue the state, but you can sue state officials. Okay, another area that allows you to go again around the 11th Amendment is FITZPATRICK v. BLITZER in 1976. Congress can waive the immunity of states under Article 5 of the 14th Amendment. And Article 5 of the 14th Amendment basically says Congress can pass laws and uphold this amendment. And the 14th Amendment, we're going to get into in a couple videos here, but it basically is like due process. We talked about due process in the Fifth Amendment, so it's about due process, equality for citizens, things like that. And if a state violates that, then their immunity under the 11th Amendment is waived by Congress, and that state can be sued. Another time, and these are more recent, these were within the 2000s. The next one is LAPIDES v. Board of Regents for the University System of Georgia. Okay, this was in 2002, and it basically said that if a state uses removal of jurisdiction, which basically is a fancy term of saying that the state wants to try this court case in a federal court instead of their state court, they instantly waive their jurisdiction or their immunity. So if a state wants to hold a court case in the federal courts and not their state courts, they waive all immunity under this court case. And then the last court case is Central Virginia Community College. Sorry, my mind is going blank. It's the Central Virginia Community College, and I didn't put who it was versus. I'll put it down here at the bottom. But it was in 2006, and it waived the immunity for bankruptcy. Under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 of the United States Constitution, the Constitution talks about Congress, the federal government, being able to set a standard for bankruptcy. And since that is stated in the Constitution, that it's giving these powers to Congress, then states don't have those. Remember, we talked about this in the 10th Amendment on the last video. So under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4, the 11th Amendment can be waived because that power of bankruptcy is given to Congress. Now, there's other situations and other times where the 11th Amendment can be got around, or you can get around the 11th Amendment, and there's other ways that you can kind of go against the sovereign immunity of states, but for the most part, if it has to do with money, like damages and stuff like that, or things that go directly against a state itself, then you kind of really can't get around it. The 11th Amendment is pretty solid on those situations. But for things like bankruptcy, suing individual officials, having your rights being taken away for race or sex or things like that, like your gender, that kind of stuff, those things, Congress can waive it, and there are court cases to back that. So, that's pretty much the 11th Amendment in a nutshell. States have sovereign immunity, which means they can't be sued under certain circumstances, but they can be sued under others. So, stick around, ladies and gentlemen, for the 12th Amendment. You're going to love that, especially with the election that just happened a couple weeks ago. So stick around for the 12th Amendment, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, stay beautiful, American. Peace.